This Sunday in worship, we read Paul's prayer to God for the Ephesians. It's in chapter 3 of Ephesians, verses 14 to 21. It's where Paul tells the believers in Ephesus that he asks God to strengthen them with power, rooted in love. And Paul asks that God would bless the Ephesians and fill them to the full measure of all the fullness of God. This whole passage is a beautiful prayer over the Ephesians, and it's a beautiful, powerful prayer that we can pray over one another. I want to encourage you in that this week. Pray this prayer for yourself. Pray it for a friend, for your spouse, for your child. You can change the words slightly to adapt it for the person you're praying for. Maybe you want to pray for your growth group leader, or let's say for Pastor Lonnie. That would be a great person to pray this prayer over this week. You might say, starting in verse 16, I pray that out of your glorious riches, God, that you would strengthen Lonnie with power through your Spirit in his inner being, so that Christ may dwell in Lonnie's heart through faith. And I pray that Lonnie, being rooted and established in love, may have the power, together with all the people at Mount Tabor, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ. And I pray that Lonnie would know your love that surpasses knowledge, so that he would be filled to the full measure of all the fullness of God. You can take these words of the Bible and make them your words, your prayer, the cry of your heart this week. I believe that God blesses us deeply when we return his word to him in prayer. In fact, it seems to me like Paul might have believed that too, because his prayer here in Ephesians, I think, echoes a prayer we find in the book of John. It's in John where Jesus prayed over his disciples, and it's John 17, and in verse 13, he prays that the disciples would have the full measure of Christ's joy within them. So, if you are in God's Word this week, particularly if you spend some time with this Ephesians passage, but you can do this with verses and excerpts all throughout the Bible, return God's Word to him in your prayers. After all, these are God's words that he has given to us to tell us who he is and who we are and how he calls us to be in relation to him. So when we align our thoughts and our prayers with his will, with his word, with what he has for us, he is faithful to answer us and to bless us by filling our hearts with the measure, the full measure of his love.